We're going to talk about replacing the brake master cylinder in the '05 Outback with a master cylinder from an '02 WRX. Basically, the difference is the WRX has a larger piston master cylinder, which reduces the amount of travel you have to press the brake pedal to get the same amount of pressure on the brakes, but it does increase the force you have to put on the brake pedal. But it eliminates or reduces significantly the mushy feeling that you get in the brakes on this car, which if you're used to WRXs or any kind of nicer sporty car, you kind of get used to that more solid feeling brake pedal, and you miss that. So that's the goal here. Now, the master cylinder can't just be swapped out, unfortunately, because the bolt pattern in the master cylinder between this car and the WRX is different. However, the bolt pattern of the brake booster, so this is the master cylinder. You can see that the cylinder is actually right in here. The brake booster is the big black drum behind it. And this provides vacuum so that it helps, it's basically power brakes. It helps you push on the brakes. You don't have to use as much force to push the brake. If you've ever driven an old car without a brake booster, you know how they used to be and how much better it is today. So the things that need to be done: you have to replace the booster, you have to replace the master cylinder, and this is the vacuum hose. So this provides the vacuum to the brake booster, and it's just, I'll take this off later, but there's a port in the manifold that this plugs into, which is pretty simple. But this little guy right here is a vacuum check valve, and you need to make sure, basically what it does is it makes sure there's always vacuum in here, even if the engine is under a high load and the vacuum is gone. So it doesn't allow the vacuum, once there's vacuum built up in the brake booster, it doesn't allow it to bleed off, at least not very quickly. So that's what this little guy is. This little guy, I'll show you, is not on the WRX. The WRX has a check valve in the hose. I'm not going to use the WRX hose. I bought a check valve that is used in Audis and Volkswagens that's just in line. So you just clamp it in line. So that's what it looks like under the hood before replacement. Let's go and look at the WRX parts. So here are the WRX parts: the brake booster and the master cylinder. So the master cylinder doesn't look very different, but right there you can see it says 1 1/16, and the Outback is a 15/16. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's enough of a percentage difference to make a pretty big difference in how much pedal travel. These I bought used. They're on eBay all over the place. You can check them and make sure that the seals are still good, and then clean it up, obviously. So that the big difference is this diameter. Then on the brake booster, you have to make sure that, well, here's the front. This is the front of the brake booster. So the master cylinder bolts onto these two bolts, and this is the piston that presses on the master that pushes the fluid into the brakes. You can see on the WRX booster, it's just a port. There's no check valve, so that's the thing that's going to be in line. Don't rest a brake booster on the piston. You can damage it. The big thing to prepare is the distance from this surface to the center line of the hole. And so this, and I'll show it in the installation, but This is the end that connects directly to the brake pedal. These 4 bolts are the same hole pattern as the existing or the stock brake booster. These go from the firewall and then bolt inside the car. So this is the unit that gets removed and replaced, and then this will mount to the brake pedal directly. And then, yeah, this is a different distance. I want to note on that distance, it is different from the WRX, so you are going to have to go in and make that change. That distance is in the owner's manual, so double check it, make sure it's right for your car, but sorry, not the owner's manual, the workshop manual. Make sure you double check it on your workshop manual. So don't mess around with these things. This is a key safety feature of your vehicle. So make sure that you're comfortable with doing this, and also make sure that all the parts are of acceptable quality before getting into any changes in the braking system in the car. Here's the check valve, and so basically all this thing does is it's a one-way valve for the vacuum. So the manifold pulls the vacuum, and then you know, like when you're under full throttle or something like that, and the vacuum in the manifold goes to 0, it'll hold the vacuum in the brake booster so that you maintain your ability to brake with the force. So on the stock WRX, the tube that runs from the intake manifold into the brake booster has a check valve built into it. The one I bought from eBay does not have that check valve, or it doesn't have the tube, so I didn't get the check valve, so I just bought this. It's a Volkswagen Audi check valve. This is actually a 15/16 barb, and the hose for the brake booster is a excuse the cat. The hose for the brake booster is a 3/8. I'm just going to use a hose clamp and hold on to the barbs a little tighter, but this will do the job. I've installed the WRX master cylinder and brake booster. I'll show you what it looks like. This is an R 3.0 car, so it's got the flat 6. I purposely didn't make a step-by-step video because this is a safety item. It's pretty important to the car, and I want to make sure that whoever does this follows the instruction manuals to the letter, and I don't want to skip anything that is important. So I'm going to refer you to both the WRX 02 or whatever model year you got the master cylinder and brake booster from, and the Outback or Legacy or whatever car you're putting it into. Get those, both of those. They give instruction on depths of the rod that connects to the brake pedal, and the depth of the rod that presses on the master cylinder, and some other information that you're going to need. So make sure to follow the instructions in the workshop manuals. So here's what I have. What you see here is usually under the cover. That's the check valve. Make sure the check valve is in the correct direction so it allows vacuum in but does not allow pressure, or allows vacuum out, I guess, and does not allow pressure back in. So that's the direction of that check valve. I actually used the same hose that was on the car, just a little extension, and the check valve actually runs right up to the original nipple, so there's really no room for this hose to collapse. It's basically just solid there. There are some lines at the back firewall here. These are metal lines, but they're plastic covered. And these lines, so the original brake master cylinder for the Legacy and the Outback have a pretty good chamfer on them from that rectangular part that seats on the firewall and clears pretty easily those lines. The WRX master cylinder does not have nearly as much chamfer. Here's the back end of the Legacy and Outback booster, and you can see it's got a pretty big crown to it. See this crown? And that's what clears those lines on the car. The WRX doesn't really have that crown. It almost comes flat with the mount. This is the mounting surface to the firewall. It almost comes flat to that, but not quite. And there is enough room for those solid lines to run behind, but not as much room, and it's not as friendly to them with the WRX booster as it is with the Outback. But it's still clears. And the lines are free. They're not being pressed in there, but there's not a lot of room. So I added a piece of foam just to make sure that it doesn't nick those or wear them out over time. Other than that, in here it's all pretty straightforward. Unbolt and bolt back in. You have to kind of maneuver the AC line out of the way. It helps to undo these clips, and you can undo these clips by taking the cowl off, and the cowl is basically this little piece. There's 3 plastic rivets that come up, and then a bunch of little pop-up rivets that you just pinch them underneath and they let go. And then you can kind of pry this guy off. Actually, I took the wiper off too, and then you can pry this guy off and get to the back side of these little clips and let them go. It just makes pulling the master cylinder in and out easier. I disconnected the master first from the brake booster, removed the master, then removed the brake booster. It gives you more room to maneuver. I would recommend doing that. It just makes it a lot easier to get everything in and out. It is a little fiddly to get the brake booster out because that rod is pretty long, and it doesn't seem like the path to get it out is straight. I mean, you can see here that the booster kind of sits behind the strut tower, so it does have to kind of come out this way and then out, but it'll come. And then let me show you what it looks like on the inside. Here's the brake pedal and the brake pedal assembly. This is actually pretty easy. I have some cars that are really, really hard to get into, and this one's not bad at all. So brake pedal. At the back here of the brake pedal, let's see if I can get the good shot here. Right there, there's a pin, and this pin has a cotter pin at this side, and actually there's a little plastic tab on the back that broke off of mine. This is the cleat that holds onto the brake pedal. So it's important to get the distance right of this cleat. That's in the workshop manual as well. So you want the brake, and by the way, the other pieces, there are 4 nuts on studs that just need to be removed, and you can kind of see 3 of the 4 there, and there's one you can get at behind this hole. You undo those 4 and undo that cleat, and you can pretty much pull the brake booster out. There's a critical distance of the rod, so you want to make sure that the booster rod can fully extend towards the back, towards the non-braking direction, because the function of the brake booster at the very top of its travel equalizes the pressure within the booster. Basically, it allows vacuum on both sides of the booster and keeps the car from braking itself. If that is wrong and you have this rod adjusted too far out, which there is a difference between the Impreza and the WRX. If this rod is too far out, then you end up automatically braking all the time, and bad things are going to happen. So don't mess with that adjustment. Just do it with do the length the factory says and leave it at that. Other than that, this process is pretty straightforward under here. Let me pull back a little bit so you can kind of see where all this is. So there's the brake. Now, the real adjustment. So I found this on my car. If you can press on the brake pedal and there is no braking going on for a significant amount of travel, what it means is that the rod that's pushing on the brake master cylinder, the rod from the booster, is not adjusted correctly. Let me show you on the old legacy part. So here's the brake master cylinder and brake booster out of the Outback. I've already loosened the master. Let me take this off. It's a little different on the WRX because there isn't this long piece and it's sealed at the back end, but it's essentially the same thing. What happens is there's the rod that you're pushing on with the brake pedal on the inside of the car pushes on the master cylinder here. So it's a little rounded edge, and it's hard to see, but you can see it's kind of splined, and it's got a hex pattern on it. You can adjust the length, amount of travel that the rod has on the brake master cylinder. So it's hollow in there, so that rod slides into this hole and presses on the master. If this is too short, you'll have a ton of travel, pedal travel, before the brakes actually engage. If it's too long, that's another situation where the brakes auto engage, and again, that's a really bad situation. So you want to make sure that this guy is not putting pressure on the brake master without you pressing on the pedal, but you also want to make sure that it's long enough that it applies pressure to the master cylinder as very soon after you press the brake. There are plenty of instructions to go through that. I don't want to go through that in this video, but make sure that you do that before you install the master on the brake booster on the new or on the replacement part on the car. The real question, or the final question, is how does it work? Did it improve things? I do find that there is an improvement in the braking. It definitely does not have as much squish once the brakes engage, much more solid feeling. I do like it. That rod is out of, it's too short because I get a pretty decent amount of pedal travel before anything happens. So I'll do it without the car on. You can kind of see there's a pretty good maybe 1.5 inches of pedal travel before the brakes engage. I think that's off, so I'll do another video showing what happened after I made the adjustment. Again, I'm not going to show the adjustment because I want to make sure that anybody who wants to do this follows the workshop manual. So there's a tool that you can buy to make adjustments to that the master cylinder end of the pressure rod. I'm waiting for that, and I should have that in a week or so to make some adjustments. But I'll make another video with an update. But once it's grabbing, there isn't a lot more travel, which is exactly what I wanted, because the stock brakes are very squishy, and there's a lot of travel to the brake engagement. So you press the brake, you feel it engage, and you keep pressing the brake for more engagement. This car doesn't do that really anymore. It's more pressure, but not more travel, which is exactly what I wanted. Feels more, obviously, like I said, about the WRX.